What's up, guys? Keyshawn here, back at you with another new Ultimate Universe video. Now, I have to make an apology video. This is a kind of new video, but also apology video. Yeah, apology, you could say. I've been pretty much out, you could say, for far too long, and I really pulled the avatar on y'all guys. I really disappeared, and I came back out of nowhere. Now, this will be an 18 plus 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 plus. This is going to be a sorry video. I will make this up for y'all guys. So this is going to be an 18 very inappropriate video. This is going to be containing a hot lot of violence, sex, language. It's going to be tough, all right? It's going to be quite tough and crazy. But this is going to be for y'all guys. This is going to be part 1 and possibly 2. Depends on what happens and going on in my household. But other ado, let's get this started. So, what's this going to be about? This is going to be what if Deku was the reincarnation of Dracula, or the new Dracula, you could say. Now, did I already do this before? Maybe, maybe not. But this might be a remake of all the Draculas that I did make, and I never finished them because I just didn't know what to do with them. But this will be part 1 and 2, maybe 3, of what if Deku was the reincarnation of Dracula. Now, how are we going to start this off? How would Deku be the reincarnation of Dracula? How would this happen? And Keyshawn, where the hell have you been? These are a lot of questions that these needs answers and questions to. I like to confuse y'all. But other than that, let's get started. We start off with pretty much Inko. Well, we'll start off with the Belmonts. Pretty much, Dracula had fought with the Belmonts multiple times and been taking mad fucking L's. Which I don't know how, but pretty much it's because of that whip. But after that, this is where Dracula did something a little bit different. He got tired of the bullshit and said, sorry guys, had to get some bags, personal information, but let's get started. So, pretty much Dracula had a pretty deviant plan. Before he died, he looked at the Belmont, let's say the last Belmont, and said to this Belmont specifically, and I quote, "You may have got me this time, but your long line of Belmonts will be over, and I will be successful to rule this world and be reincarnated again." Of course, this is where Belmont would say, "Our Belmont line will last long and shit and all that." But pretty much Dracula smiles and says, "Good luck," and pretty much dies off. Now, we're gonna say a billion years passed, 1,000 years passed. And we're going to reach to the society now of people getting quirks. And pretty much the Belmonts thought, well, shit was alright. This is alright. This is perfect fine. People got quirks now. If the human race do, get attacked by Dracula, they could pretty much handle their shit. Right? Wrong. Pretty much after that, Belmonts died off. All the families that helped out the Belmonts died off to their ancestors and great children, forgot about the lineage of the whip and stuff. Like, they have the whip, but it's on ornament, and they don't know what properties they could have. And pretty much who is a Belmont can't use the whip at all because, well, you could say they're not qualified for it. But after that, this is where Inko has a baby. And this is where Dracula is born again. Now, Deku looks much different. Instead of having green hair, his hair is black, with his eyes is completely different, as it's vampire-like, and he has teeth, which they pretty much says, "Oh, your son look like your son already has developed his quirk from an early age." When Inko says, "Huh?" and she says, "Let me see," which she looks at Deku, and Deku opens up his eyes with a complete stare at her, which she pretty much smiles and says, "My boy looks beautiful," which this is where Deku begins to, we're going to say Dracula, but you could say Deku, but you could say Dracula is pretty much, we're going to say Deku Dracula, you could say, combined. They're combined emotions. So it's new life and also old life. And this is where Dracula says, so this is my mom. She smiles at me, even though she feels this dark presence. And he begins to start saying, maybe this is my chance to change. Now, this is where we're going to do a quick time skip, and we're going to have a 1-year-old Deku. Now, this 1-year-old Deku is already having is already know his powers, as he's turning into a bat, pretty much doing telekinesis, such forth, and he's a genius. Deku is completely a genius at this point. He knows intelligence, he knows mathematics, he knows a lot of shit right now. He's that of, you could say that of Tony Stark and Albert Einstein. He's that of that. His IQ is pretty much up to 1,000. He knows a lot of shit, including medieval times, and knows how to do things that most babies don't know how to do. And Iko is just outstanding of what he can do, but she's also proud of him. This is where we're gonna say a part where this is where Bakugo is finally gets his quirk, and he goes to Deku and says, "Look, Deku, I got my quirk," which is an explosion. Which this is where Deku looks at Bakugo, but he's not he's impressed. Like he shows the face of impressment, but he doesn't really care like that. You could say he's impressed, but he doesn't care because he's like, okay, I like that. That's pretty cool. You can do explosion. Which Bakugo says, what do you mean by that? Which this is where Deku says, oh, I'm sorry. I mean, it's cool. It's badass. Which Deku says that in his kid voice. Which this is where Bakugo says, damn right it is. Which this is where Bakugo kind of gets his douchey puts open again, but not into a high stance, because since Deku has a quirk too, well, you could say which Bakugo thinks that he has a quirk, but he doesn't. He just has vampire powers and everything. Now I know what you're thinking. Oh, but ain't Dracula has to drain blood, or ain't Deku has to drain people blood to get stronger and shit? My question is that no, because I'm gonna say the chaos, which Dracula has, and it's a part of him. The chaos is pretty much is his power source, as it transforms him, gives him multiple abilities and stuff. And if Deku doesn't have the chaos, he has vampire abilities, so he can pretty much fuck up people with his vampire power. And if not that, then you could say he's just a quirkless Deku. But other than that, this is where Deku pretty much looks at Bakugo's ability and begins to say, you know, Kashan, your quirk can do a bigger explosion, which Bakugo says, what do you mean? Which this is where Deku does the same thing. You could say have copy his ability, not as copy, but made him as his own, and pretty much did a massive explosion. Kind of not as a nuke head explosion, but that of a big explosion, you could say. And blew up a tree, which Bakugo says, you took my quirk, which Deku looks at him and says, no, I didn't. I just basically copied your quirk, or you could say made it as my own, and I just showed you what your ability can go for. Which this is where Bakugo says, oh, okay. Which this is where Deku tells him to pretty much train, and he can make a bigger explosion than he can. Which this is where Bakugo says, alright. Now, this is where Bakugo will be stronger than his counterpart in canon, because Deku kind of gave him that motivation of, hey, this is what your quirk can do, and your quirk can become a nuke if you want it to. Now, this is where we do another time skip, and we're going to have Deku in middle school. Not in high school yet, but in middle school. This is where Deku is pretty much fond by all the girls. Like, all the girls are... Like, Deku is not a picky chooser. He doesn't pick one girl. He takes a lot of girls. Like, he pretty much has, like, half of the classroom of girls as his girlfriends, or you could say dates, or as his, like, or his ladies, you could say. Bakugo, Bakugo don't really care about Deku having a girl. He is jealous, but he doesn't really care. He's happy for him, because he's like, look at my boy. But pretty much, yeah. So, Deku is pretty much, and he gets to do whatever he wants. He has, like, the ability to mind control people and stuff. And he's just drinking wine in class, which Bakugo don't regularly drink his wine with him. But when it's the occasion, he does, because Deku get to do what the fuck he wants. The teachers don't say anything because Deku makes good grades. He actually is like the inspiration of the school. Like, everybody wants to be like Deku. Everybody wants to have his intelligence and shit. Like, everybody wants to be like Deku, you could say. They want to be like him. They want to be him. They want to have his children. The women want to have his children. The guys want to be like him. like Deku was pretty much getting the popularity that he regularly don't care about, you could say. But pretty much this is where Deku begins to we're gonna say this is where he starts walking home, and we're not at the part with the bridge yet. But this is where he's walking home, and this is where it's nighttime because we're gonna say Deku went to a party at a kid's party, and they're all having a party, doing illegal alcohol and stuff. And as he's walking home, this is where he hears a whisper or hears like a great wind. This is where Deku begins to pull out a sword and point it at someone, which this is Death. Now Death looks at him and says, "Dracula, I've been searching for you." And he pretty much does the bow and says, "My lord." Which this is where Deku says, "Who are you?" Which this is where Deku begins to kind of get some of Dracula's memories back. Because Dracula is dormant, as he kept himself dormant, so he let Deku take over. But if his shit gets real, that's when Dracula takes in and really fucks up shit. But he left himself dormant. This is where he shows some of the memories to Deku, and he says, "What the hell?" And he begins to remember and says, "Death?" And Death begins to say, "You remember Lord Dracula," and begins to talk to Deku. Now, Deku begins to say, "Who's Dracula?" And Death begins to about to explain to him what it is. But this is where Dracula begins to telekinesis. You could say telekinesis against Death. It says, "Yo, do not tell him shit. All right, keep it completely quiet. I tell him myself when the time comes. But right now, just tell him that he is the lord of a castle. He has his power, and that's all you need to tell him. And he has servants and all that." Which this is where of course Death says, "Understood, master," and begins to talk to Deku and explain to him what he has and what ability he can do and stuff. Which Deku is intrigued and says, "Huh, okay, show me this castle." Which Death begins to teleport him to the castle. Now, this is where the castle is in the sky. It's not anywhere near the ground or anything. No, it's in the sky. Which Deku looks and he says, "Oh, wow, this place is nice." Now, this is where the servants are coming in. Like, some are like succubus, vampires that got resurrected due to Dracula power, like vampires, ogres, like, all the creatures that you regularly love and see, including the skeleton. I'm going to say the Belmont wannabe head ass skeleton. Now, I tell you where he comes in, but he's looking and all the servants bowing down to him. This is where the skeleton with the whip, looking like a Belmont motherfucker, comes in and says, "Ha!" and pretty much throws a whip, which Deku dodges, and he pretty much falls on his face and says, "Ah!" And he gets up and begins to say, "Ha, Lord Dracula, I expect you to dodge that." And just like doing the teeth, like that with the jaw. And this is where Deku says, "And who's this?" And this is where Death pretty much says, "This is one of your commanders." Which he pretty much says, "Belmont, skeleton Belmont whip, at your service, sir." Which this is where Deku says, okay. Now, this is where pretty much the other skeleton with the boomerang says, "You idiot," and begins to hit the other Belmont skeleton in the head and says, "Don't you know not to attack Lord Drake, Lord Duck?" Which this is where Death looks at him with a serious look and says, "Don't." Which he says, "Lord Deku." Which the skeleton Belmont pretty much, or the skeleton whip, pretty much says, "Right, sorry." Now, this is where all the servants are pretty much saying hi and decided that, Lord Dracula's back and stuff, and saying that it's all peaceful stuff, and asking what is his plans to take over the world, or what is it. And pretty much half of the vampires are resurrected due to his power. So they're pretty much thinking, like, are we going to start war? Are we going to fuck up these humans? What are we going to do? What's the plan? This is where Deku pretty much says, "Nothing. We're just going to relax here." Now, if the humans want to start beef with us, if they want to start beef, I would try to make peace. No monsters will get hurt here. This will be a sanctuary, and everything will be peaceful. And this is where one of the vampires say, "Well, we will be hungry soon. What will you do? And we need human blood." Which this is where Deku says, "All right. How about we feast on? I'll let y'all feast on the villains. because there are some villains in this world that is just bad and just absolutely do the worst, such as rapists, murderers. Y'all can feast on them, but not on innocent people and stuff. Which Deku is making a hard decision, but he knows if he doesn't let them feast, then they just gonna. He doesn't know what they do, and he doesn't know if he's strong enough to fight them. Keep in mind, this is just a Deku who knows he has powers, but he doesn't know what his powers can do and what's his full stance. So keep in mind in that. So this Deku pretty much explains to them and what they can do, and they pretty much says okay, and they're fine with that, and they pretty much says okay, and they begin to smile. Now this is where the vampires are all happy and stuff, and begin to say, "Give it up for the new Lord, Lord Deku," and then all the monsters are cheering and stuff, including the succubus. This is where one of the succubus hops on Deku with big boobs and an ass, saying, "You did a good job making a speech." Which this is where Deku begins to blush a little bit and says, "Yeah, sure," because she's packing the heat. A succubus packing the heat like that. Who wouldn't blush? You gotta be a man of God to not blush and get a bone of that. But let's continue. Pretty much the next. Well, we're gonna say after that night. Well, pretty much after all that, Deku went home, and pretty much Inko was worried about him and asked where he has been, which Inko was sleeping on the couch, which Deku says it's okay. He kind of got lost a little bit, which Inko doesn't buy it because Deku knows his house and knows the whole neighborhood and the whole city by the back of his hand. So she doesn't buy it by shit, but she allows it. And Deku just goes in his room and just goes to sleep. Well, you could say he sleeps, but he doesn't really sleep. He just goes on his computer and he kind of does a business, makes money by the side so he can buy his mom some expensive shit because he loves his mom a lot. But let's continue. Pretty much the next day, this is where we're going to get to the bridge part and the whole thing. This is where Deku pretty much is getting dressed and stuff. And this is where you could say Deku is pretty much is walking to school and stuff. This is where Bakugo is walking with him. It says, "Sup, Kashan, nerd," which this is where Deku says, "What's up, Bakugo?" Now, actually not. This is where Bakugo says, "What's up, nerd?" Which this is where Deku says, "What's up, Kashan?" And they begin to start walking to school. Now, Deku heads into school and stuff, and as he's doing that, this is where all his girls or lady friends and girlfriends, you could say, are coming up to him and says, "Deku, can you get me this?" Which Deku looks and says, "Huh, so you want that?" Which, this is where she says, "Yes, I wanted to give it for my sister for a gift," which Deku can tell who's lying and not lying. And they always been telling the truth, so all his girls, and you could say lady friends, always tell the truth to him. No one can lie to him. Because one time, one kid did lie to him to his face, and it was a bully that was trying to bully Deku, and Deku just punched the shit out of him in his face and broke his nose and whole fracture structure and jaw, so yeah. Everybody knows Deku is dangerous like that, but he's being the hero, which everybody's thinking is happy about that. But pretty much Deku is pretty much getting the gifts for them, ordering it for them, and telling them that it will be in school by today. Which they're all excited and stuff. All the girls are hopping on him and stuff. And I'm gonna say a nerd girl, who is Deku, one of Deku's girlfriends, is pretty much blushing and pretty much not. She doesn't act for anything. This is where Deku goes up to her and pretty much smiles and says, "Do you want anything, dear?" Which pretty much she starts blushing extra hard and says, "No, I don't want anything." Which Deku says, "Are you sure? Not anything?" And she pretty much says, "Well, there is this one thing." And she pretty much shows out and she says, "It's the," and she pretty much says, "It's the 10-2-5," because copyright purposes. But pretty much she's asked for that, and Deku pretty much looks at it and says, "Huh, okay, I get it for you." Which she pretty much says, "Really?" Which Deku says, "Yeah, if only you can teach me how to play." Which she pretty much says, "You got yourself a deal." Which Deku smiles and she smiles and start blushing. Now, the other girls, they're not jealous. Like, they all share Deku, and Deku shows them all the affection, love, so not one of them gets, special treatment. So none of the girls don't hate each other or beefing with each other at all, or saying, "I'm going to cut your throat, you bet." They don't say none of that, so it's all fine. It's all fine and dandy. And Deku pulls it off somehow, so keep in mind. But pretty much, this is where we're gonna say after like the day, one of the girls asks to come to Deku house. Now, of course, this is where all the girls wanted to go to Deku house too, and Deku pretty much says okay to them, but he doesn't know what's gonna happen, pretty much. But this is where the teacher comes in and he's looking at everybody, including at Deku, because like this is where the teacher says the whole speech and stuff. It says everybody wants to become a hero and throw up paper. Everybody's excited and stuff. Deku, he's all right. He doesn't really. He's all chill, and relaxed, but he is happy that he's going to sign up for the UA. Now, this is where the teacher is looking at all the names and stuff. He says, uh, everybody's here, Bakugo and Mizuga Midoriya. Now, this is where everybody's looking and saying, oh yeah, Deku's definitely going in there. With his power, with his quirk, yeah, he can get in there. And with all he can do, yeah, even if he doesn't become a hero, he can become a support line or anything. Like, everybody's just like praising Deku as a god. Now, this is where a nerd is pretty much mad because he doesn't have like a good quirk, and he's being pissed off saying, "Damn you, Deku!" And he's just putting all his hatred to Deku and stuff. Deku can sense his emotion and hatred, and he looks at the nerd and says, looks at the nerd, and he gives the nerd telekinesis and says, "Are you mad because you don't have the willpower to become a hero?" Which the nerd says, "How do you hear me? How do you understand? How you can hear what I'm saying?" Which nerd says, which this is where Deku says, "I have telekinesis, but I can give you a power." Which this is where the nerd says, "What power can you give me? What do you want? Super strength, super speed, super intelligence? What you want?" This is what the nerd is thinking wisely, and he says, "I want super intelligence." Which Deku says, "All right, done." Which this is where the nerd says, "I don't feel anything." Which Deku says, "Well, go to the UA high tomorrow with your intelligence. I promise you that it will work." Which Deku pretty much smiles at him, and the nerd says, "Yeah, right." And pretty much the nerd gets up and walks away. Now, this is where Deku pretty much gets his books and stuff, and no, Bakugo and Deku don't get in a fight whatsoever because A, they're friends, B, Deku has a quirk, so Bakugo won't bully him, and C, they're more close as best friends, so it's not like, oh, he's using me or I'm using him. Yeah, it's more like just best friends and best bros. But after that, this is where Deku and Bakugo is walking together, and Bakugo pretty much explains to Deku, like talks to Deku and says, "So, are we gonna train at the beach for a week to get strong and stuff?" Which this is where Deku says, "Yeah, of course. I got no other plans to do." Which this is where Bakugo says, "All right, bet." Now, as they're going, this is where the Sludge villain comes in, and he wraps himself around Deku, which this is the worst mistake he ever did. As he wrapping himself around Deku, this is where the Sludge villain is saying, "Your body's mine, kid." This is where Deku pretty much looks at the Sludge villain and says, "Oh," and he pretty much touched the Sludge villain once. Now, this is what Deku does, and this is how dangerous y'all should imagine Deku. He touched the Sludge villain once. Now, what did Deku do? He touched the villain with all elements. Now, think of it, all the elements: electricity, fire, ice, lava, and all that. You could say those lava, all those elements. Now, he touched the Sludge villain. Now, this is where the Sludge villain begins to get. Well, this is where the Sludge villain begins to start turning into. He starts to turn into lava, which he starts feeling the whole pain and saying, "Ah!" And this is where he gets frozen over by ice. And electricity is just like, so he's getting electrocuted, burnt, and frozen at the same time. So he can't move. He's covered in ice while the lava is still burning him, and he's stuck in electricity. Now, as that's happening, Deku pretty much breaks off, like breaks the ice and shit, and the Sludge villain gets shattered in pieces. Now, Deku's not done yet. He begins to let all those elements go, and pretty much the Sludge villain is back to normal. Now, the Sludge villain was in agonizing pain for like a straight minute, and it like imagine stubbing your toe like real hard, with a dump tag. That's how hell it was for him. And he was in agonizing pain. This is where the Sludge villain is pretty much, he can't do nothing because he's too much still in shock, so he's just on the ground like a sludge. This is where All Might comes in and says, I am here, which Bakugo witnessed the whole thing, but he didn't know what Deku did. Now, this is where All Might says, oh, the Sludge villain's right here. Who did it? Which Deku pretty much says, oh, it was me. Which pretty much All Might says, oh, well, good job, kid. What quirk is yours? Which Deku says, I'm really not true where's my quirk, but I'll figure it out what name I should call it or something. Which this is where he hears a voice saying chaos. Which this is where Deku says, I think it's chaos. Which this is where All Might says, sounds like a villain's power, but what you did was a hero thing, so it might be a hero quirk. Which Deku says, cool. Now this is where Deku asks for an autograph because he is a fan of All Might. And not like a fanboy geek out, but he's a fan of All Might. And All Might gives him an autograph, including Bakugo. And pretty much, this is where he heads off. Now, for plot purposes, this is where we're going to have the Sludge villain bottle flies out of All Might's pocket. Just for plot purposes, because we're going to have someone have one for all, so let's continue. This is where as Bakugo and Deku is walking home, pretty much saying, this is where Bakugo asks Deku what was that power and how did he add all those elements together. Because Bakugo's not dumb. Like, Deku has been on Bakugo ass about studies and knowledge and shit. So Bakugo won't be like a bum for his life and don't know what to do with himself because he only has an explosion quirk. So this is where pretty much Bakugo and Deku is talking about it, and Deku pretty much saying that he doesn't really know that much, but he is practicing it and understanding what powers he has. Which Bakugo says, okay. Now, this is where the Sludge villain attack happens again, and we're going to say this is a random kid getting attacked, and we're going to say it's the nerd before that is pretty much getting attacked, and he's screaming for help. This is where all the heroes don't know what to do because they don't have the right quirk to pretty much help him out. And this is where Deku is pretty much thinking about if he should help or not. But this is where Bakugo comes in and pretty much comes in with an explosion and tells the kid to cover up his face, which the kid pretty much covers up his face, and he pretty much creates an explosion. But not as a big explosion to hit the kid, but to hit the Sludge villain, the blinded Sludge villain. Now the Sludge villain gets blinded, and Bakugo immediately runs in and try to grab him out of it, which he's almost successful. Which All Might sees, and he can't really do nothing about it, but he sees the heroism in Bakugo. And Bakugo's really trying his best to get the kid out. This is what the Sludge villain is pretty much saying, there's no way you can get him out. This is where Deku thinks and yells at Bakugo and says, use your feet as an explosion to boost yourself back, which this is where Bakugo does it and sends himself back flying, pulling out the nerd kid. Now, this nerd kid pretty much gets pulled out, and the Sludge villain is saying, what? No! Now, this is where All Might buffs back up and does his explosion and pretty much spatters the whole slime villain. Now, Bakugo pretty much gets praise and stuff and saying, oh, wow, good job, and all that, and saying, wow, you did a good job. You should really sign under my wing. You're really gifted and stuff, which Deku smiles and says, good job, and begins to start walking away. And Bakugo's, getting all the praise and stuff, and Bakugo's taking all the praise, but he starts to look around and trying to figure out where the hell is Deku at. Because Deku, if it wasn't for Deku helping him out with the whole idea to using his feet, he wouldn't get the kid out. Now, this is where Deku's walking away, and this is where Bakugo runs up to Deku and says, I haven't thanked you for telling me to use that, which Deku says it's not really nothing. Like, you was going to figure out sooner or not. Which Bakugo says, nah, thanks. Now, this is where All Might comes in and asks for... Well, this is where Deku pretty much just flies away in a bat form. Or in a shadow form, you could say. And just flies away. Which Bakugo says, that's pretty cool. Which, this is where All Might comes in and pretty much offer Bakugo to become the next successor. Which Bakugo gladly accepts. Now, we're going to say this is where the beach... This is where the... Well... before we start the beach, this is where we're going to get to with the 18 juicy parts. Now, this is where Inko pretty much went out to the hot springs. Well, kind of went out to the hot springs and stuff and hanged out with her girlfriends. We're going to say Bakugo's mom and some other girls. Now, this is where Deku's at his house by himself, and he's with all the girls. Now, this is where all the girls are pretty much hanging out with Deku, eating food, enjoying the time with Deku and stuff, and all that. Now, this is where one of the girls was a succubus, or you could say a secret succubus, or the watch over Deku from child's birth. But she was waiting at the right moment to pretty much be with him and with a group of girls. Now, this is where the succubus wanted to pretty much activate her motivation, you could say, to tie the knot with Deku and, to do it with him. Because, succubus gotta have some of that DNA, semen, you could say. Now, this is where pretty much one of the girls pretty much says, let's go in the room. And pretty much this is where one of the girls make out with Deku while falling on the bed. Now, Deku is a virgin, so keep in mind, he is a virgin. He haven't had sex yet. And he pretty much doesn't know what to do. But this is the succubus that's seducing him. And she's pretty much saying, I'm going to show you how to become a real man. Which, this is where Deku begins to get a boner. Now, what inches are we talking about? 7 inches? 8 inches? 1 inch? Micropenis? Maybe? No. We're talking about 10 inches, my guy. That's the nice size. Now, this is where the girl pretty much takes off Deku pants and unzips them down and says, wow, this is quite big. Which Deku was pretty much not embarrassed, but pretty much is saying, huh, it is. Now, this is where one of the girls, and we're going to say the nerd girl, comes in, and she pretty much about to ask Deku for something until she begins to seize and says, what the hell is going on? Which she begins to start blushing and see Deku's shirt off and pretty much pants down in his penis. Now, this is where all the other girls are running upstairs and seeing what the hell's going on. And they begin to say, what the hell's going on? Now, this is the part Deku is about to explain, which the succubus pretty much says that she's about to have sex with Deku. And if y'all want to join, y'all might as well join in while y'all still can to be with Deku. Which, this is where she's using her influence power, which Deku doesn't notice a little bit, but he thinks it's just her quirk. And it's not going to work. But the girls begins to all start touching themselves in the bottom, start getting wet, one of them touching their boobs, and one of their eyes are turning into a harp shape, and they all start, taking off their clothes and stuff, and hops in the bed with Deku. Now, this is going to be very juicy, so everybody keep their bone in their pants, don't beat their meat, alright? We're just going to listen to what's happening. Pretty much one of the girls is making out with Deku while the other girls is pretty much sucking on his nipples and stuff, and one of them is giving him that nice good 9,000. The nerd girl with glasses. Yes, I said it. Who knew the nerd girl who can give out some good technology head? But pretty much the other one's just like filling his abs and stuff and all that. Now, this is where Deku is pretty much about to nut 5,000 and nuts in the nerd girl's mouth. Now, this is where she gulps it. Now, I know, pretty crazy, gulps it. And pretty much the succubus says ready for round 2, Deku. And pretty much Deku not really know what to do next. But says, yeah. Now, this is where, think of that good hentai where all the girls are lined up on the bed and Deku and the guy's doing them one by one and nutting in them. Yeah, that's what Deku's doing. He's nutting in each and last one of them. Can he get them pregnant? No, he can control who can get pregnant and not get pregnant. So, yeah, he's just nutting in them. And if not, they're on birth control. So, yeah, they're at that age. So, pretty much, Deku's pretty much doing them. And he nuts in all of them and stuff. And he's pretty much laying in the bed now. After he says, wow, so this was sex? This shit feels amazing. Now, all the girls are laying with him and stuff and pretty much in the bed. Now, this is where the training week comes in. Now, Deku is pretty much still in the bed with all the girls and stuff, and he pretty much sees them all pretty much still naked and stuff with him, and he pretty much gets up and wraps them all in covers and stuff, and pretty much makes some reference and leaves a note for them that he's going out for training. Now, as he's doing that, he goes and meet up with Bakugo, which Bakugo says, "Ah, you ready for training?" Which All Might is there too. Which Deku says, "Oh, cool, All Might, he's here. What's this about? He's gonna be your trainer, our personal trainer, to train us up." With pretty much Bakugo says, "Yeah, you could say that." Now, Deku has the ability to read minds and also see all the memories of what of anyone who else see. He can touch them or just see them by just looking at them in the eyes, and he pretty much sees everything and knows all my secret. He says, "Oh, so that's why he's here." Okay, shall we get training then? Which All Might says, "Yes, let's get training." And pretty much All Might explains what they have to do and what sit-ups and they have to do, like 100 push-ups and stuff and 50 miles runs and stuff, and get all that training and clean this whole beach up. Which Bakugo is kind of saying, "Ah, god damn it," and Deku's saying, "This should be a challenge." Now, as that whole month, we're gonna say a month, that whole 15 months, Deku has been doing training and stuff and all that, and he has also been talking to his girlfriends and stuff, or yeah, his girlfriends and stuff, and they all been also talking to him, hanging out with him, also doing some sex things with him and all that. And Deku's pretty much has been getting stronger with the training of All Might, and he also has been taking a bit of biting one of his girlfriend's necks and been draining their blood, and they completely let him do it because they think it's a kinky thing. So yeah, so Deku has also been getting stronger because of that too. Now, after the whole 15 months over, Deku and Bakugo is completely ripped now. You could say completely fitted, ripped, and trained, and their bond of teamwork is really good because they have been training with All Might itself, and All Might has been telling them to make sure to use teamwork, but also to fight with each other too. And they're pretty much good. Like their bond is like, you could say Sasuke and Naruto bond, or Kakashi and Obito's bond. That's some good shit bond, you could say. Now after that, All Might says good luck to them too, and they say good luck. They say all right. Now the next day they start getting dressed and stuff, and they're ready, and they start meeting up to the entrance exams. Now this is where pretty much Deku and Bakugo sit to each other, start talking and stuff, and this is where Ida begins to start talking to both of them and says, "Hey, can y'all please keep it down? I'm trying to, like, everybody's they're about to be speaking." Which Deku looks at him with a serious look and says, "Okay, sure." Which Ida pretty much is scared because he got a serious look of death. Which Bakugo is giving out the look too, but Ida don't give a shit about him, and he want to beef with him. But pretty much after that, this is where Deku and Bakugo start. Yeah, Deku and Bakugo start doing the tests and stuff. Now for the IQ thing, Deku passed that in first place, pretty much passing Ida in the IQ. Bakugo, he gets in third. Yes, Bakugo gets in third. That's pretty crazy for myself too. But for the weight, Deku's in first in that. Bakugo's in second. And everything else is perfectly fine. Is, you could say, kind of the same. Now this is where they start doing the robot thing, and this is where the teacher is explaining everything, and Deku is pretty much saying that he got this, which Bakugo is kind of saying he got this too. He's going to totally beat Deku's butt and get in first place. Now this is where the teacher says, "Are you marked?" Set, go, and everybody start going. Now this is where Deku is pretty much summoning skeletons, and he summons his commanders, his three commanders, which one is the boomerang commander, the boomerang skeleton, the whip skeleton, and I'm gonna say the skeleton with the flying kick, or the skeleton that kicks. He's in one of the Castlevania games. He does like a flying kick. He jumps in the air, kicks, and his kicks is quite powerful as a skeleton. I don't know why. It killed me multiple times. I still question today. But other than that, he summons them. Now, he doesn't make them as skeleton. He makes them as human beings, as powerful human beings. They look and they say, huh, you summon us, Lord? Which this is where Deku says, help me get points to pretty much pass, because I'm pretty much too lazy to do it right now. The skeleton whip says, haha, I should show you my skills. Which the cape one says, alright, this should be easy. With my with my with my speed and with my power, I should kick these robots' ass. Which for this boomerang skeleton, he pretty much saying, if you say so. Oh, this is gonna be a drag. Which this is where they start going with, you could say, a good speed, a good, not with great fast speed. Well, they can do it, but they're just doing it with regular speed, not showing off that much. But they are showing off at the same time. When the skeleton boomerang throws his boomerangs, his fire boomerangs, and they begins to start hitting robots left and right, making them explode and stuff, and also slicing through some robots. The whip skeleton, he pretty much, he grabs his whip, start whipping machinery heads off and stuff, and grabbing them, and wrapping his whip around them and smashing them together with other robots. While the cape skeleton, he's flying up, kicking them down and stuff, and using his legs for kicks and stuff, and using his leg as a jetpack kick too, and just start doing kicks and everything, left and right, and jumping up in the sky and floating, and also just kicking down. And the teachers are looking and saying, wow, he can summon like other beings from other worlds or something. Like, what are they? And all my saying, huh, I didn't know he can do that. Quite amazing. Now, this is where All Might's thinking, saying, did I choose the wrong successor? But this is where Deku pretty much can listen to All Might and pretty much thinking, saying, he better not think that Bakugo is a mistake, because Bakugo is the perfect suited fit, which Deku is thinking about that. Now, this is where Deku is about to tell the skeletons to pretty much pretty much their job is done here. Until Deku looks and hears a girl screaming, and it's Uraraka. Now, this is where the skeletons look, and I'm gonna say the three skeleton commanders, they look, and they immediately fall in love with Uraraka, saying, and they hearts, like, they eyes turn into hearts and says, who is that beautiful girl? Which, including the Belmont skeleton, says it too. It says, who is that girl? Which, this is where they realize she's in trouble, and Deku's about to do something until the skeletons, they all come in. With the skeleton with the cape comes in, he jumps in the air and says, flying kick! And just straight up kicks the robot's head off, while the boomerang skeleton throws his boomerangs at the big robot arms and chops off his arms. While the last one, he pretty much gets his whip, and he turns his whip into a ice, fire, lava, all the elements. And he pretty much says, whip! And he pretty much whips the machinery in the chest, and it creates a massive explosion. But it creates an explosion, and it turns into snow around, and everybody's looking and saying, "What is this?" And they're all like saying, "Wow, ooh." And as the three skeletons are standing up, or you could say look like humans, they're pretty much looking like Hiroi, and everybody's saying, "Who are those people? Are they heroes?" Which, everybody's in awe. Deku was pretty much just smacking his face, saying, "That's a little bit over dramatic." Now, this is where the skeleton cape start running to the girl and says, "Are you okay, lady? Or lady miss?" Which she's saying, "Yes. Who are y'all?" Which pretty much the boomerang says, My name is Skeleton Boomerang, or Boo Skeleton." Which the other one says, "My name is Whip Skeleton, Commander Whip Skeleton." Which the other one says, "My name is Cape Skeleton. How you doing?" Which pretty much she says, "Wow, why your name's named like that?" Which they're about to explain, but they pretty much says, "Well, we was just born like that with names like that." Which pretty much she says, "Well, I think it's kind of funny and cute." Which they all start blushing, and one of them has a nosebleed. Which he says, "How is this possible? Which this is where Deku says, "All right, time for y'all to go." And he snaps his finger. He says, "Wait," and they pretty much disappear. Now, this is where Uraraka says, "Where did they go?" Which Deku asks, "Do you need healing or anything?" And Deku takes a knee and heals her. Which she pretty much says, "Thanks." Which this is where Deku says, "Well, he be going now," and he pretty much leaves. Now, this is where Bakugo pretty much walks with Deku, and they're pretty much going home. Now, the next day, this is where Deku pretty much wakes up, and one of his girlfriends are pretty much in the bed with him, and asks to go back to bed, which Deku says he can't. He has to look at the mail, and he pretty much got accepted, and he reached in first place. By All Might saying he reached his first place and beat his old school, which Deku is impressed. Now, this is part 1 and 2 of What If Deku was the Reincarnation of Dracula. If you like, leave a like. We're only just going to go for like 5 likes because I don't deserve 10, 20, or 30 due to me being out for a lot of months. So, only 5 likes, guys. And I will do the video tomorrow, okay? And I promise y'all that. So, there won't be no skip outs. But I'm Keyshawn Chia. Thanks for watching, and peace out.
It looks like you lost another one.